Welcome, dear listeners, to our Hercule Poirot audiobook series, where the master detective's little grey cells unravel the darkest enigmas. Today, we dive into Hercule Poirot's sinister affair at Styles, a chilling tale of poison, betrayal, and a locked-room murder that defies logic. Imagine a grand English estate shrouded in fog, a wealthy widow convulsing in agony, her final gasp echoing through silent halls. Was it accident or a killer's cunning strike? Join Poirot as he exposes the venomous secrets lurking in every shadow. Settle in, for the game is afoot, and the truth will shock you to your core. Chapter 1. The shadowed arrival. The fog clung to the English countryside like a shroud, wrapping the rolling hills of Essex in a veil of mystery that seemed almost deliberate. It was late autumn, and the air carried the sharp bite of impending winter, mingled with the earthy scent of damp leaves and distant wood smoke. Hercule Poirot stepped off the train at the quaint station of Styles St. Mary, his polished shoes crunching against the gravel platform. He adjusted his immaculate moustache with a gloved hand, his sharp green eyes piercing the haze as if challenging it to reveal its secrets. At 50-something, Poirot moved with the precision of a man who had long ago mastered the art of observation, his compact frame belying a mind as agile as a panther in pursuit. He had received the summons just 2 days prior, a terse telegram from Captain Arthur Hastings, his old comrade from the war days, now residing at Styles Court as a guest of the Inglethorp family. Urgent matter, family unrest, your expertise required, discretion paramount. Poirot had smiled faintly at the message. Hastings, ever the Englishman, understated even in crisis. But the detective's instincts hummed like a finely tuned violin. Unrest in a grand estate often masks something far more lethal. A horse-drawn carriage awaited him, its driver a stoic figure bundled in wool, his breath forming clouds in the chill. "Mr. Poirot, Styles Court, sir." The man grunted, tipping his cap. Poirot nodded, climbing aboard with a murmur of thanks in his accented English. As they rattled along the winding lane, the fog thickened, swallowing the landscape in ethereal swirls. Bare trees loomed like skeletal sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky. Poirot leaned back, his thoughts drifting to the Inglethorps. He knew little of them beyond Hastings' sporadic letters. Emily Inglethorp, the wealthy widow who ruled the estate with an iron fist wrapped in velvet. Her much younger husband, Alfred, an enigmatic newcomer with a penchant for exotic travels, and the stepchildren, John and Lawrence Cavendish, heirs apparent whose lives had been upended by their stepmother's remarriage. The carriage jolted over a rut, pulling Poirot from his reverie. "Fog's a curse this time of year," the driver muttered, his voice rough as sandpaper. "Hides more than it should." Poirot arched an eyebrow. "And what, mon ami, does it hide at Styles Court?" The driver hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. "Whispers, sir. Folks say Mrs. Inglethorpe's not well. Arguments echo from the house at night. And that husband of hers, well, he's got eyes like a fox in a henhouse." Poirot filed the observation away, his mind cataloguing it like a rare specimen. Gossip, he knew, was often the breadcrumb trail to truth. As they crested a hill, Styles Court emerged from the mist, a sprawling Tudor manor of red brick and leaded windows, its chimneys puffing defiant smoke into the grey heavens. Ivy crawled up its walls like veins, and the gardens, though manicured, held an air of neglect, with wilted roses bowing their heads in surrender. The carriage halted at the grand entrance where Hastings awaited, his face etched with worry lines that hadn't been there during their last meeting in London. "Poirot, thank heavens you've come," Hastings exclaimed, clasping the detective's hand firmly. He was a tall man, with the bearing of a retired officer, his moustache neatly trimmed, but his eyes shadowed by fatigue. "The situation's grown dire. Come inside. We'll talk in the study." They entered the foyer, where a crystal chandelier cast fractured light on polished oak floors. A maid, young and wide-eyed, took Poirot's coat with trembling hands. "Tea, sir?" she asked, her voice a whisper. Poirot declined politely, noting her pallor, fear, perhaps, or exhaustion. Hastings led him to a cozy study lined with leather-bound books and a roaring fire that did little to dispel the chill permeating the house. Once seated, Hastings wasted no time. "It's Emily, Mrs. Inglethorp. She's been ill for weeks, confined to her bed. The doctor says it's nerves, but I suspect something more sinister. There have been incidents." Poirot leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "Incidents, Hastings. Elaborate, if you please." Hastings ran a hand through his hair. "Arguments for one. Emily and Alfred clashed over money last week, something about her will. John's been brooding, claiming Alfred's after the estate, and then there's Evelyn Howard, Emily's companion. She left in a huff yesterday, muttering about poison." "Poison?" Poirot's voice sharpened, his eyes gleaming. "That is a word not to be thrown lightly, mon ami." Hastings nodded gravely. "Evelyn's dramatic. But she swore Emily's tonic smelled off. The family's on edge. Even the servants whisper of curses." A knock interrupted them. The door creaked open to reveal John Cavendish, Emily's stepson, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s, with a jaw set like granite and eyes that flickered with barely contained frustration. "Hastings, is this the detective?" he asked, his tone brusque. Hastings introduced them, and John shook Poirot's hand with a grip that bordered on aggressive. "Mother's resting, but she'll see you soon. This nonsense has gone on long enough. Alfred's the root of it, slimy fellow, always scheming." Poirot observed John's clenched fists, the vein pulsing in his temple. "And you, Monsieur Cavendish, what is your relation to this scheming?" John snorted. "I'm the eldest. The estate should be mine. But Mother's besotted with that charlatan. If anything happens to her..." He trailed off, his implication hanging like smoke. As John departed, Poirot turned to Hastings. "A man of passion, that one. Now, let us see Madame Inglethorp." They ascended the grand staircase, its banisters carved with intricate vines that seemed to writhe in the dim light. The upper hallway was lined with portraits of stern ancestors, their eyes following the visitors with judgmental stares. Emily's bedroom door was ajar, guarded by Mary Cavendish, John's wife, a striking woman with raven hair and porcelain skin, her dress a whisper of silk. "She's weak today," Mary warned, her voice melodic, yet laced with concern. "Don't tire her." Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, I assure you, my inquiries are gentle." Inside, the room was a cocoon of luxury, heavy velvet curtains drawn against the fog, a four-poster bed dominating the space, and the faint scent of lavender mingling with something acrid, medicine, perhaps. Emily Inglethorp lay propped on pillows, her face gaunt and pale, framed by silver hair, yet her eyes burned with intelligence, sharp as daggers. "Monsieur Poirot," she rasped, extending a frail hand, "Arthur speaks highly of you. This illness, it's draining me." Poirot took her hand gently, noting the tremor. "Madame, describe your symptoms, if you will." She sighed. "Headaches, nausea, a burning in my throat. The doctor prescribes tonics, but they offer little relief. Her gaze drifted to a bedside table where a vial of amber liquid stood beside a glass. "And your husband?" Poirot probed. Emily's lips thinned. "Alfred is devoted. The others, they misunderstand him." A cough racked her, and Mary hurried in with water. As Emily sipped, Poirot's eyes scanned the room. A locked jewelry box, scattered letters, and a faint stain on the carpet. Wine, or something darker. Their conversation was cut short by Alfred Inglethorp's arrival. He was a man of middling height, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that darted like minnows. "Darling, you should rest," he cooed, placing a proprietary hand on her shoulder. To Poirot, he offered an oily smile. "Detective, I hope you're not here on false pretenses. My wife's health is delicate but natural." Poirot returned the smile, though his was laced with steel. "Nature, monsieur, often hides the hand of man." Alfred's expression flickered. Annoyance? Fear, before he ushered them out. Back in the hallway, Hastings whispered, "What do you make of him?" Poirot stroked his moustache. "A fox," as the driver said. But foxes leave tracks. The afternoon waned into evening, the fog pressing against the windows like an uninvited guest. Poirot wandered the grounds alone, his overcoat flapping in the wind. He examined the garden path, noting fresh footprints near the greenhouse. Too large for a woman's, inside the glass structure, exotic plants thrived amid humidity, their leaves glistening. A shelf held gardening tools and bottles labeled with chemical names, arsenic, strychnine, for pests ostensibly. As dusk fell, a scream shattered the silence, a raw primal cry from the house. Poirot raced back, arriving to chaos in Emily's room. She lay convulsing on the bed, foam flecking her lips, her body arched in agony. Alfred hovered, wringing his hands. John burst in, shouting for the doctor. Mary fanned her frantically. Poirot pushed through, his voice commanding calm. "The vial, where is it?" It lay shattered on the floor, its contents spilled in a poisonous pool. Emily's eyes locked on Poirot's, wide with terror. "Help! Me!" she gasped, before collapsing into stillness. The doctor, summoned hastily, pronounced it a seizure, but Poirot knelt by the body, his fingers probing gently. No pulse. "Not a seizure, mes amis," he murmured. "Poison, deliberate and deadly." The room fell silent, accusations unspoken in every glance. As the household reeled, Poirot stood, his mind whirring. The doors had been locked from within. No one had entered, yet death had struck with precision. He addressed the gathered family. "Fear not. Hercule Poirot is here, and the truth will emerge from the shadows." For now, a fragile peace settled, the immediate horror contained, though the killer's presence lingered like the fog outside, promising revelations in the chapters to come. But in this shadowed arrival, Poirot had already begun his dance with deception, restoring a semblance of order to the fractured estate. The night deepened, and with it, the intrigue. Chapter 2. Whispers of Betrayal. The first light of dawn pierced the fog like hesitant fingers, casting a pallid glow over Styles Court. The estate, once a bastion of genteel tranquility, now thrummed with an undercurrent of dread, as if the very walls absorbed the poison that had claimed Emily Inglethorp. Hercule Poirot rose early, his sleep undisturbed by the night's tragedy, his mind ever vigilant, preferred puzzles to dreams. He dressed meticulously in a crisp suit, his tie a perfect Windsor knot, and descended to the breakfast room, where the family gathered in uneasy silence. Hastings was already there, nursing a cup of tea that had long gone cold, his face drawn like a soldier after a lost battle. John Cavendish paced by the window, his boots thudding rhythmically on the Persian rug, while Mary sat rigidly at the table, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the linen cloth. Alfred Inglethorp hovered near the sideboard, pouring coffee with hands that betrayed a slight tremor. The air was thick with the aroma of toast and bacon, but no one ate. Grief and suspicion had soured appetites. "Bonjour, mes amis," Poirot greeted, his voice a calm anchor in the storm. "A tragic night, but the day brings clarity. We must speak plainly now." He took a seat, accepting a cup from the maid, Annie, the wide-eyed girl from yesterday whose movements were now skittish like a deer sensing predators. John halted his pacing, his eyes narrowing. Clarity. Mother's dead, poisoned in her own bed. What more is there? It was that tonic. Alfred's doing, mark my words. Alfred set down his cup with a clatter, his beard quivering. "Accusations won't bring her back, John. I loved her. Why would I harm my own wife?" Mary's voice cut in, soft but edged with steel. "Because the estate reverts to us if she's gone without a new will. Everyone knows you've been pressing her to change it." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing storm. "Enough. Suspicions are like weeds. They choke the truth. I will question each of you alone, starting with you, Monsieur Cavendish." He gestured to the adjoining library, a room of towering shelves and faded maps, where sunlight filtered through dust motes like golden threads. John followed, slumping into an armchair as Poirot closed the door. "Tell me of the inheritance," the detective prompted, his eyes fixed on John's calloused hands, hands of a man who rode hard and worked the land. John leaned forward, his voice a low rumble. "Mother's fortune came from her first husband, my father. She remarried Alfred 2 years ago against our advice. He's a wanderer, always talking of investments in far-off places. Lately, they've argued over her will. He wanted more control. I overheard them last week. She refused, said the money stays with Lawrence and me." "And your alibi for last night?" Poirot inquired, his tone neutral yet probing. John shifted. "I was in the billiard room until midnight, then bed. Mary can vouch." Poirot nodded, but his mind noted the hesitation, a crack in the facade. "One more thing. Have you enemies, monsieur? Or debts that press?" John's jaw tightened. "Gambling losses, yes, but nothing I'd kill for." As he left, Poirot jotted notes in a small leather-bound book, his script elegant and precise. Next came Mary, gliding into the room like a shadow in morning black. Her beauty was striking, with high cheekbones and eyes the colour of storm clouds. "Madame Cavendish," Poirot began, offering her a chair. "You seem composed amid chaos. What secrets do you guard?" She met his gaze steadily. "Secrets. Only that this house breeds resentment. Emily was kind to me, but Alfred, he's manipulative. I saw him mixing her tonic yesterday afternoon in the kitchen. He claimed it was herbs from his travels, but the smell was bitter, unnatural." Poirot leaned closer. "And your own movements?" Mary folded her hands. "I read in the drawing room until 10, then checked on Emily. She was restless, complaining of thirst. I brought her water, nothing more." Her voice faltered slightly on the last word, a tell that Poirot filed away. As she departed, he pondered her poise. Too perfect, perhaps, like a rehearsed performance. Alfred entered last among the family, his demeanour a mix of grief and defensiveness. He perched on the edge of the chair, twisting a ring on his finger. "Monsieur Inglethorp," Poirot said, "your wife's tonic. Explain." Alfred sighed dramatically. "It was a remedy from India for her nerves. Strychnine in trace amounts, Prescribed by Dr. Bauer. I administered it faithfully. Poirot's eyebrows rose. Strychnine, a dangerous choice. And the vial, why shattered? Alfred spread his hands. She must have knocked it in her throes. I was in my study, reviewing papers. The interrogation shifted to the staff. Annie, the maid, fidgeted in the library, her apron twisted in her hands. I didn't do it, sir, she blurted before Poirot could speak. I loved the mistress. He smiled reassuringly. Of course, mademoiselle. But tell me, what did you see? Tears welled in her eyes. Arguments, sir. Mr. Alfred and the mistress about money, and Miss Howard leaving in anger. She said something about poison before she went. Poirot dismissed her gently, then summoned the gardener, a grizzled man named Dorcas, who smelled of soil and pipe tobacco. The grounds, monsieur, anything amiss? Dorcas scratched his head. Footprints near the summer house, fresh ones, and I found this in the rose bed. He produced a handkerchief, stained with dark crimson blotches, blood, unmistakably. Poirot examined it closely, noting initials embroidered in the corner. A.I. Alfred Inglethorp, he murmured, most intriguing. He pocketed it, thanking Dorcas, his mind racing. A planted clue, or genuine evidence. As midday approached, the household tension mounted like a gathering storm. Poirot ventured outdoors, the fog lifting to reveal dew-kissed lawns and distant woods ablaze in autumn hues. He followed the footprints Dorcas mentioned, leading to the summer house, a quaint pavilion overgrown with wisteria. Inside, he discovered a crumpled envelope sealed with wax, addressed to the family solicitor. Slipping it open with care, he read a scrawled note. Beware the serpent in your midst. Death comes twice. A second threat, inked in red, its script disguised but bold. Returning to the house, Poirot convened with Hastings in the study. This note, fresh ink, mon ami. The killer escalates. Hastings paled. Who? Poirot tapped his temple. Patience. Now the will. They visited the solicitor's office in the nearby village, a quaint building with creaking floors and the scent of old parchment. Mr. Wells, a bespectacled man with a nasal voice, produced Emily's will. Standard, sir. Estate to John and Lawrence with a stipend for Alfred. But Poirot's keen eye spotted irregularities. The signature wavered, the paper mismatched. Forged, he declared. A clever imitation, but the ink bleeds unnaturally. Wells gasped. Impossible. Yet under Poirot's scrutiny, he admitted a recent visit from Alfred, inquiring about changes. Back at Styles, Poirot confronted the group in the drawing room. The bloody handkerchief and forged will laid out like exhibits in a trial. This cloth, he announced, bears Alfred's initials found in the garden. Alfred protested vehemently. Planted, I swear. Poirot nodded. Indeed, the blood is not human, pigs from the butchers. A diversion. Eyes turned accusingly, but Poirot continued. And the will, a forgery meant to incite greed. But who benefits? His gaze fell on Annie, who trembled. Not you, mademoiselle. Your alibi holds. You were in the village fetching milk during the critical hour. Relief washed over her face, a small victory amid the turmoil. Poirot reconstructed a partial timeline. Emily's last meal at 8, tonic at 9, death at 10. The poison was slow-acting, administered earlier. But the forger... that points elsewhere. As the group dispersed, a fragile truce settled. Accusations tempered by Poirot's logic, the servant exonerated, bringing a breath of normalcy. Yet whispers lingered in the corridors, betrayals uncoiling like vines, hinting at deeper deceptions waiting in the wings. The day waned, and with it, the first layers of the mystery peeled away, leaving the heart of the sinister affair pulsing just out of reach. Chapter 3. The Poison Chalice. The midday sun struggled through the persistent haze, bathing Styles Court in a muted amber light that did little to lift the veil of mourning. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with unspoken accusations, each glance a spark that could ignite the powder keg of secrets. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the previous day's revelations, moved through the house like a conductor preparing his orchestra for a symphony of truth. He'd spent the morning in solitary contemplation, pacing the conservatory where exotic ferns whispered in the humid air, his little grey cells weaving threads from the tangled skein of evidence. Hastings found him there, amid the lush greenery, sketching diagrams on a notepad with precise strokes. "Poirot, the police inspector has arrived. Japp, from Scotland Yard. He's demanding statements." Poirot looked up, his eyes twinkling with that familiar mix of amusement and intensity. "Excellent, mon ami. Let him bark. We shall provide the bite. But first, a reenactment. Gather everyone in the dining room at precisely 2 o'clock. The fatal evening must be relived, step by shadowed step." By the appointed hour, the family assembled around the long mahogany table, its surface gleaming under crystal candelabras. Inspector Japp, a burly man with a moustache rivaling Poirot's in bushiness but lacking its elegance, stood at the head, notebook in hand. "Right then, let's get this sorted. Mrs. Inglethorp's death. No accident, that's clear. Poison, strychnine from the tonic." Alfred shifted uncomfortably in his chair, while John drummed his fingers, and Mary stared fixedly at a portrait on the wall, a stern Victorian matron whose eyes seemed to judge them all. Poirot took centre stage, his voice resonant and commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, we recreate the hours before tragedy. Madame Cavendish, you first. Describe your actions from dinner onward." Mary straightened, her voice steady. "We dined at 7. Roast beef, potatoes, the usual. Emily complained of fatigue, retired early. I lingered in the salon, embroidery in hand, until 9, when I heard footsteps overhead." Poirot nodded, gesturing to the maid, Annie. "And you, mademoiselle? The tonic, when did you prepare it?" Annie wrung her apron, her cheeks flushed. "At 8:30, sir. Mr. Alfred handed me the powder. I mixed it in the kitchen, brought it up at 9. Alfred interjected, his tone defensive. "As prescribed, Dr. Wilkins' orders, strychnine for her heart." Japp snorted. "Convenient, that. Where's this doctor?" Poirot intervened smoothly. "We shall summon him. Now, Monsieur Inglethorp, demonstrate." Alfred rose, mimicking the motions, measuring a pinch of white powder from an imaginary vial, stirring it into a glass. But Poirot's sharp eyes caught a discrepancy, the angle of his wrist, the hesitation. "Non, you stir clockwise." Yet the residue in the shattered vial swirled counterclockwise. Someone else prepared it that night. Gasps rippled through the room. John leaped to his feet. "See, he's lying." But Poirot waved him down. "Patience, let us proceed to the bedroom." The group migrated upstairs, the stairs creaking under their collective weight like reluctant witnesses. In Emily's chamber, the bed loomed empty, its linens fresh but the air still heavy with the ghost of her final gasps. "Here," Poirot directed, "Madame Cavendish, position yourself as you were." Mary stood by the window, feigning reading a book. "I entered to say good night," she recounted. Emily sipped the tonic, winced at the bitterness. Poirot knelt by the bedside table, his fingers tracing the wood grain. A soft click echoed as he pressed a hidden latch, A secret drawer sprang open, revealing a bundle of letters bound in faded ribbon. The papers were yellowed with age, but the ink on some was fresh crimson as arterial blood. Poirot unfolded one, his voice dropping to a dramatic hush. "Listen. Your past sins catch up, dear sister. The homicide in Calcutta, your first husband's accident, pay or perish. Blackmail." Alfred paled, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Impossible. Emily never mentioned. But Mary's hand flew to her mouth. Calcutta. She travelled there years ago before marrying John's father. Japp seized the letters. "This changes everything. Motive aplenty." Poirot continued reading aloud, the words painting a vivid tableau of betrayal. Emily's involvement in a colonial scandal, a rival poisoned during a tea party, the death ruled accidental but whispers persisting. The sender demands silence money, Poirot concluded. And look, the postmark from the village, dated last month. As the reenactment dissolved into heated discussion, a new figure arrived. Dr. Wilkins, summoned by telegram. A lanky man with wire-rimmed glasses and a satchel brimming with vials. "Strychnine?" "Yes, I prescribed it, but in minuscule doses. Therapeutic, not lethal." Poirot pressed him. "And experimental tonics? Monsieur Inglethorp claims you approved his brews." Wilkins frowned. "Never. I warned against his amateur alchemy." Alfred bristled. "Lies! We discussed it in private." But Annie, hovering in the doorway, piped up timidly. "Sir, I overheard them last night, in the pantry. Mr. Alfred and the doctor, whispering about adjusting the formula." Wilkins flushed crimson. "Nonsense. I was here for a checkup, nothing more." The revelation hung like a storm cloud. Poirot orchestrated a search of the pantry, uncovering a hidden shelf behind jars of preserves, flasks bubbling with iridescent liquids, labelled in Alfred's hand. One bore strychnine crystals, pure and deadly. "A sinister alliance," Poirot murmured. But for what end? Tea was served in the drawing room to ease frayed nerves, a spread of scones and clotted cream, the china clinking delicately. Poirot accepted a cup from Annie, but as he raised it to his lips, a faint almond scent wafted up, not from the brew, but something sharper, cyanide perhaps. His hand froze. Mon Dieu! He dashed the cup to the floor where it shattered, the liquid fizzing ominously on the carpet. Chaos erupted. Japp drew his whistle, summoning constables from outside. Attempted murder. Poirot, unflappable, sniffed the residue. Prussic acid, quick and traceless. But who poured? Eyes turned to Annie, who sobbed denial. "Not me, sir. I brewed the pot, but Mr. Alfred added the milk." Alfred stammered. "Absurd. I merely stirred." But Poirot's gaze pierced him. "No, the milk jug, tampered, and you, doctor, your satchel holds such poisons." A quick search confirmed. A vial missing its cap. Wilkins protested. "Framed. I left it unattended downstairs." Amid the uproar, Poirot pieced it swiftly. The attack on me, clumsy, desperate, not the killer's style, too overt. "This clears you, Monsieur Wells, the solicitor. Your name in the blackmail letters was a forgery. Your visit yesterday alibied by the postmaster." Wells, who had joined the gathering, sagged in relief. Thank God. The household exhaled collectively, a momentary haven forged in the storm. Constables escorted Wilkins for questioning, his alliance with Alfred fracturing under scrutiny. As evening shadows lengthened, casting elongated figures across the lawns, Poirot confided in Hastings by the fireplace. "The chalice is poisoned, yes, but the hand that filled it trembles. Secret surface, yet the core remains hidden, a past homicide echoing into the present." John approached, his earlier fury tempered. You've saved us from madness, Poirot. The detective inclined his head, merely illuminated the path. But beware, the noose tightens on the true serpent. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling windows like impatient spectres. The chapter of Revelations closed with the family retreating to their rooms, a brittle peace prevailing, though the air buzzed with anticipation of the morrow's unmaskings. Poirot retired to his guest chamber, the blackmail letters spread before him like a map to buried treasure or a grave. The game deepened, each move a dance with danger. The poisoned chalice passed but not yet emptied. Chapter 4. Veils of deception. Twilight descended upon Styles Court like a velvet curtain, softening the edges of the estate's ancient stones while sharpening the tensions within. The air hummed with the low drone of evening insects, a deceptive serenade masking the storm of revelations brewing inside. Hercule Poirot, ever the maestro of deduction, had orchestrated the day's events with meticulous care, allowing fragments of truth to surface like bubbles in a simmering pot. Now, as the family and suspects converged in the grand drawing room, the veils of deception were poised to tear. The room itself was a tableau of faded opulence. Damask sofas arranged in a semicircle, a massive fireplace crackling with logs that cast flickering shadows across ornate wallpaper depicting mythical hunts. Inspector Japp lounged by the mantel, his pipe sending aromatic plumes skyward, while Hastings fidgeted in an armchair, his military bearing strained by the unrelenting intrigue. John Cavendish stood rigid near the bay window, his silhouette framed against the dying light, arms crossed as if warding off invisible blows. Mary perched on the edge of a settee, her fingers interlaced so tightly her knuckles gleamed white. Alfred Inglethorp paced slowly, his beard casting a jagged shadow, and Dr. Wilkins sat isolated in a corner, his glasses reflecting the fire's glow like twin embers. Annie, the maid, hovered at the periphery, summoned as a reluctant participant. Poirot entered last, his steps measured, carrying a leather valise that clinked softly with concealed contents. "Mesdames et messieurs," he announced, his voice slicing through the murmurs like a scalpel. "The time for half-truths has passed. We peel away the layers now, exposing the core of this conspiracy. Sit, if you please." They complied, the room falling into a charged hush broken only by the tick of a grandfather clock in the hall. He began with Mary, his gaze locking onto hers with unyielding intensity. "Madame Cavendish, your composure is admirable, but it conceals a tempest. Tell us of your liaison with Dr. Wilkins." The room inhaled sharply, Mary's face drained of colour, her eyes darting to the doctor, who stiffened. "How?" she whispered. Poirot produced a folded letter from his valise, its edges worn. "This missive, hidden in your vanity drawer, discovered during my discreet search this afternoon. My dearest M, our stolen moments sustain me amid this charade." Signed with a W. The ink matches those blackmail notes, but the passion is genuine. Wilkins surged forward. "It's not what it seems." But Mary, composure cracking, confessed in a rush. "It started innocently. Conversations during Emily's treatments, Alfred's neglect of her mirrored John's indifference to me, but we ended it months ago, fearing discovery." John whirled on her, his voice thunderous. "Indifference, while I slaved to keep this estate afloat, buried in debts from your extravagant taste," Poirot interjected smoothly. "Ah, the debts, Monsieur Cavendish. Your gambling excursions to London clubs, receipts I procured from your study desk, thousands owed, funded by siphoning from Emily's accounts, a motive, non, to eliminate her before exposure." John's defiance crumbled, his shoulders slumping. I borrowed, yes, intending repayment. But murder, never. The admission hung heavy, fracturing the family's facade further. Poirot turned to Annie, who shrank back. And you, mademoiselle, your loyalty to Emily was profound, but rooted in blood. You are her distant cousin, are you not? Vengeance for a slain ancestor, wronged by the Inglethorps in colonial days. Annie's eyes widened, tears spilling. How did you know? Poirot smiled faintly. Your locket, engraved with the Howard crest, matching Evelyn's. She confided in me upon her return this morning. You sought retribution through service, planting doubts about poison. The maid nodded brokenly. My great-aunt died penniless after their schemes in India. I whispered warnings, but I didn't kill. Poirot patted her hand reassuringly. I believe you. Your role was peripheral, a whisperer in the shadows. As confessions cascaded, Poirot directed attention upward. Now to the attic, a realm of dust and forgotten relics. He led the group upstairs, the stairs groaning under their weight like weary bones. The attic door, long sealed, yielded to Japp's shoulder with a protesting creak. Inside, cobwebs draped like funeral veils over trunks and antiquities. Poirot illuminated a corner with a lantern, revealing a grotesque figure, a life-size dummy, fashioned from wax and cloth, rigged with thin wires connected to a pulley system hidden in the rafters. Behold, Poirot declared, the architect of ghostly apparitions. Pulled from below, it mimics movement, shadows on walls, thumps in the night, to sow fear and divert suspicion. Wilkins gasped. That's from my medical props, stolen. But Alfred pointed accusingly. You brought it here, Doctor, during your visits. Poirot shook his head. Non. The wires lead to the guest room, occupied by a visitor we overlooked. Cynthia Murdoch, the jealous cousin from afar. A side door burst open, and constables dragged in a struggling woman, mid-30s with wild auburn hair and eyes blazing defiance. Cynthia, Mary exclaimed. Emily's niece? Poirot nodded. She arrived unannounced weeks ago, hiding in the servants' quarters. Her motive, exclusion from the will. She aided the plot, rigging haunts, forging alibis, but stopped short of murder. Cynthia snarled. I wanted her scared, not dead. Alfred promised a share if we drove her mad. Japp clapped handcuffs on her wrists, aiding and abetting, enough for now. As she was led away, the group returned downstairs, the attic's chill clinging to them. In the drawing room once more, Poirot assembled the fragments. See the web. Mary's affair provided distraction. John's debts fueled desperation. Annie's grudge sowed seeds. Cynthia's tricks masked the real intent. Forged alibis crumble under timelines. Wilkins seen in the village pharmacy buying extra strychnine. Alfred's footprints in the herb garden where deadly nightshade grows. Alfred protested vehemently, his voice rising to a pitch. Lies, all circumstantial. But Poirot unveiled a final exhibit. A silver locket from Emily's jewelry box, containing a miniature portrait stained with a reddish residue. Blood? No. Ink from the blackmail pen traced to your desk, Monsieur Inglethorp, a pact sealed in crimson deception. The room erupted in accusations, but Poirot's authority quelled it. This unravels the peripheral threads. Cynthia's arrest lifts the immediate veil of panic. Alliances shatter, truths emerge unbidden. John extended a hand to Mary, a tentative bridge over their chasm. We rebuild from here. Even Wilkins, cleared of direct murder but tarnished by complicity, muttered apologies. As night fully enveloped the estate, stars piercing the cleared sky like diamond pins. A semblance of order returned. Servants lit candles, their flames steady beacons. Hastings clapped Poirot on the back. Masterful old chap, the noose loosens. But Poirot's eyes gleamed with unfinished business. The surface veils lift mon ami, revealing the silhouette beneath. Yet the final deception awaits dawn's light. The household dispersed to uneasy rest, the drawing room emptying like a stage after a tumultuous act. Poirot lingered by the fire, flames dancing in his eyes, piecing the mosaic's heart. Outside, an owl hooted, a harbinger of the reckoning to come, as deceptions unraveled, paving the path to absolute truth. Chapter 5. The final reckoning. The first rays of dawn gilded the horizons of Essex, transforming the fog-shrouded fields into a tapestry of shimmering gold and lingering shadows. Styles Court, battered by nights of revelation and deceit, stood resilient under the awakening sky, its chimneys exhaling faint wisps of smoke like sighs of exhaustion. Inside, the household stirred with a mix of dread and anticipation, the air electric with the promise of closure. Hercule Poirot had risen before the sun, his ritual of hot chocolate abandoned in favor of a brisk walk through the dew-kissed gardens. He paused by an ancient oak, its bark etched with time's indifferent carvings, and allowed his mind to orchestrate the symphony's finale. Every clue, every whispered betrayal, converged in his thoughts like tributaries feeding a mighty river, unstoppable, inevitable. By mid-morning, the remnants of the fractured family assembled in the library, a sanctuary of knowledge now repurposed as a court of truth. Sunlight streamed through mullioned windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like reluctant witnesses. Inspector Japp positioned himself by the door, arms folded, his presence a bulwark against escape. Hastings occupied a wing-back chair, notebook poised, his loyalty to Poirot unwavering. John Cavendish leaned against a bookshelf, his face a mask of weary resolve, while Mary sat beside him, their hands clasped in a new-found solidarity forged from shared confessions. Alfred Inglethorp occupied the center, his posture defiant yet brittle, like a porcelain figure on the verge of shattering. Dr. Wilkins, released pending charges, lingered in the shadows, his medical bag a talisman of diminished authority. Annie, the maid, stood sentinel by the tea trolley, her eyes downcast but alert. Poirot entered with the gravitas of a conductor stepping onto the podium, his valise now brimming with the artifacts of deception. He placed it on the central table with a deliberate thud, the sound echoing like a gavel strike. "Mes amis," he began, his voice a velvet blade. "We reach the denouement. The veils have lifted, the peripherals unmasked. Cynthia Murdoch cools her heels in custody, her tricks exposed. But the heart of this sinister affair, the poison's architect, remains to be unveiled. Gather close. The truth demands your undivided gaze." He opened the valise, extracting items one by one, each a puzzle piece in his masterful mosaic. First, the poison vial shard, its edge glinting malevolently. This vessel held death, disguised as remedy. Strychnine, potent and unforgiving, administered not in haste, but with calculated precision. Next, the bloody ledger, a hidden account book discovered in Alfred's private safe during a pre-dawn search. Pages stained not with ink alone, but the crimson tally of embezzlement. Thousands siphoned from Emily's fortune, funneled to shadowy investments in distant lands. Alfred's eyes narrowed, his beard twitching. Preposterous. Those are legitimate transactions. Emily approved them. Poirot's smile was a fleeting shadow. Ah, but the signatures, forged with a trembling hand, The loops too uniform, the pressure inconsistent, and this. He produced an overlooked letter, its envelope crisp despite the chaos. Posted from London, but bearing your cologne's distinctive scent, sandalwood and deceit. It warns of impending ruin unless more funds flow. Your creditors, Monsieur Inglethorp, are impatient wolves. The room tensed, breaths held in collective suspense. John leaned forward, his voice a growl. You killed her for money? My stepmother, your wife? Alfred waved a dismissive hand. Absurd theatre. Where's the proof? Poirot's eyes gleamed with triumph. The proof, mon cher, is in the mosaic. Consider the timeline. Emily's refusal to amend her will sealed her fate. You, with access to her chambers, laced the tonic earlier that day, under guise of devotion. The locked doors, a red herring. You entered via the concealed passage from the adjoining study, known only to intimates. Mary gasped, her free hand covering her mouth. The passage, behind the bookcase. Poirot nodded. Discovered last night. Its hinges oiled recently, your handiwork. Dust disturbed. Fibers from your cuff embedded in the latch. He turned to Wilkins. And you, Doctor, unwittingly supplied the toxin, your alliance a smokescreen for Alfred's vendetta. But your conscience faltered, hence the clumsy attempt on my life, a desperate bid to silence the unraveling. Wilkins bowed his head. I suspected, but feared implication. Forgive me. Poirot's gaze softened momentarily. Fear is the killer's ally, but truth liberates. Alfred rose abruptly, his chair scraping harshly. Lies, all conjecture. Produce a witness. Poirot's response was swift. A small phial from his pocket containing a powdery residue. Not a witness, but science. This scraping from your fountain pen matches the poison's composition. Traces left from your experimental brews in the greenhouse. And the motive, deeper than greed. Emily uncovered your buried vendetta, the Calcutta homicide. Not her doing, but yours. A rival dispatched for colonial spoils, his widow's fortune your first conquest. The revelation struck like lightning. Alfred's facade cracked, his face contorting in fury and despair. She threatened exposure. After all I endured, the jungles, the betrayals, to build a life here. She was a chain, binding me to mediocrity. His confession spilled forth, a torrent unchecked. The calculated marriage, the slow poisoning masked as illness, the planted clues to implicate others. It was flawless until you meddled, you infernal Belgian. Japp stepped forward, handcuffs at the ready. That's enough. Alfred Inglethorp, you're under arrest for the murder of Emily Inglethorp. The click of metal echoed, a punctuation to the saga. Alfred sagged, defiance ebbing as constables led him away, his footsteps fading down the hall like a retreating spectre. In the ensuing silence, Poirot addressed the survivors. Justice descends, swift and unyielding. The estate is cleansed, no threads dangle. John extended a hand, gratitude etched in his features. Poirot, you've saved us. From ruin, from ourselves. Mary nodded, tears glistening, and given us a chance to mend. Even Annie curtsied, her voice soft. The shadows lift, sir. Thank you. As authorities wrapped up formalities, Poirot and Hastings strolled the grounds one last time. The sun climbed higher, banishing the last wisps of fog, revealing the countryside in vibrant clarity, meadows dotted with wildflowers, birdsong trilling in harmonious chorus. A fine resolution, eh, Poirot? Hastings remarked, puffing his pipe. The detective adjusted his hat, a satisfied glint in his eye. Oui, mon ami, the little grey cells triumph. But remember, every end births new beginnings. They reached the carriage, where the driver awaited, cap in hand. Poirot climbed aboard, casting a final glance at Styles Court, now a beacon of renewal rather than a crypt of secrets. As the horses clopped away, the estate receded, its turrets silhouetted against the azure sky. No open doors lingered, the narrative sealed with fulfillment, the sinister affair eternally interred in the annals of solved enigmas. Yet, in the quiet recesses of Poirot's mind, echoes of the case resonated, a reminder that human frailty wove the most intricate webs, and vigilance was the eternal guardian. The world spun onward, mysteries awaiting, but for this moment, peace reigned supreme.